Hello, good people, and welcome to the Higher Living Podcast, episode 16. In studio today, we have as always, a very interesting gentleman, but I must be honest, this is one that I have been excited for quite some time, because the gentleman in studio with us, whose name is Sergey Bashala, is a highly successful entrepreneur who focuses on empowering organizations through transformation. He deals with large, complex corporations and firms and helps them become compliant around BEE. He helps them to build skills. He works with disabled learners. He basically works through the entire empowerment supply chain when it comes to businesses. It's extremely interesting, but even more interesting is Mr. Bashala's background and the fact that he comes from the DRC, and I'm just so excited to hear the story of Sergey Bashala and share this with all of you. So without further ado, good day, Sergey. How are you?
No, I'm very well. Thank you very much. How are you, Sean?
I'm always well, and having you on my show has made it even better. And thanks once again for making the time to join the Higher Living podcast and help people to get ahead in life. Sergey, empowerment and economic empowerment is such a broad topic, and I'm hoping that today, you as a super specialist in the field will be able to take us through exactly where the thinking processes were around economic empowerment, Black economic empowerment, and how have we now moved and transformed to the place that we currently are with BEE. But before we get into that, as always, we need to know who we're talking to. We need to understand, we need to lift up the hood and understand who Sergey Bashala is. So if I'd like to hand the mic over to you, and maybe you can just give us an overview of who you are, where you come from, and how it is that you've ended up being the managing director of Metanoia Ratings, which is one of the premier empowerment organizations.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much, Sean. It's absolutely a pleasure for me to be on your show, on your podcast. I've watched you closely. I've listened to a few of these. They are so amazing and very interesting as well. And the people that you keep bringing on the show, please may you continue and long may it last. So a bit about me. Don't really want to go and describe my entire life because that's going to probably take a lot longer. But as you mentioned there in your intro, yes, I am actually originally from the DRC. I was born in the DRC, although I am South African. I was born in the DRC, and we moved to South Africa in 1993 in March. I can't really remember the actual day. I used to remember, but now I no longer do. So I'm very much South African. So I came here, I was very young, probably around 9 or 10. And, we were here in South Africa for some time. My sister had been here earlier on and for medical reasons, etc. So we stopped by to visit her and see how everything would go. We were actually on our way to Europe, to Belgium. Obviously, DRC being a colony of Belgium, it only made sense that we either went to France or Belgium. We had done much of our schooling in French as well, but so we stopped by, and then we decided to go down to Cape Town. Well, I'm saying we decided, probably my parents decided. We went down to Cape Town for a bit of vacation and loved the place. It was fantastic. Got a place out in Muizenberg, for those that know Muizenberg, near the sea, just amazing. And yeah, we decided to basically park shop there, and ever since we've been there. I've done my schooling down in Cape Town. I completed there. I went to UCT. I was at the Institute of Bankers, where I qualified as a certified chartered banker and carried on. I've specialized in transformation, B-BBEE, with the relevant programs that the DTI have put together. I actually worked as a banker with Standard Bank, obviously, and then went on to work at Old Mutual as a financial advisor, which is also another passion of mine, an area that I'm very passionate about. And all still forms part of economic transformation and economic empowerment. And interesting enough, a good friend of mine who's also still in the field, he actually was in this field way before me and discovered it. And he started obviously in the BBEE field early days And he then invited me and said, listen, why don't you pop in here? We need you, come and help us do some auditing. And I thought, oh, this sounds pretty interesting. And obviously, at the time, I remember reading a magazine, and they featured, I don't know if I can say the name, Vuyo Jack, and his friend, who had just conducted a research in Malaysia about basically coming up with a model, an indice to actually measure transformation and empowerment, which was very interesting. So today I'm in the field. After that, I worked for probably about 10 years or so. Did the whole corporate, becoming partner, director, shareholder in a company, and decided that it was time for me to start my own. I've always wanted to be in business, and I decided to obviously take the jump and start my own verification agency and management consulting firm, Metanoia Ratings. So I work closely with my wife, who is my business partner in this as well. So I always say it's my wife and I and the kids. So this is where we are. And what we're really trying to do is not just to go out there and make money, but we made a decision on what are we going to do to empower people? How are we going to empower them and support them through their transformational lives? So we want to be able to take somebody almost from a place zero and turning them into a hero. That's really who we are from individuals. And to the corporates, we want to help them understand the legislations better. We want to help them, assist them in implementing the legislations so that there is real, meaningful transformation and impact at grassroots level.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, in our previous episode, we were talking about understanding your why. When you become an entrepreneur, it's so important about understanding your why. And I think the why in your case is very clear. And I mean, that's quite a bold, mission statement and purpose, a call to action, if I can put it that way. So well done, Sergey. I mean, how long has Metanoia Ratings been in business?
Thanks for that. Yeah, Metanoia has actually been in business since 2014, I would say. But before that, we had another company that still forms part of the Metanoia. I always say it's the story, the evolution. That obviously started the whole thing, seed. And for us, it was sow a seed, and you can reap the benefits of sowing a seed in actually impacting and transforming the lives of these youngsters. But Metanoia officially, I would say from 2014, this is really when we launched. Obviously, there was a bit of change in the legislation where they allowed chartered accountants or auditing firms to also participate in the economic empowerment space as verification auditors. And my wife being a chartered accountant, it obviously then made sense for us to just quickly partner up, and we trained her. She did all the training, and we were able to be accredited and licensed to actually go ahead and do that.
Okay, so now I also know why you're so professional, because your wife is your boss.
No, not only do I have her, yeah, absolutely. Not only do I have her as my boss, I also have the little ones.
Oh,
I'm also
yes.
very bossy. So I always say I'm the employee around here.
No, that's fantastic. And tell me, why the name Metanoia? Is there any significance in the name?
Yeah, absolutely. So personally, I'm quite religious. So I obviously share Christianity as a faith, and I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And metanoia is actually Greek for transformation. So that's what it means. So it has that connotation of changing, one's old ways into the new ways, the transformation aspect, and a total complete transformation of 180 degrees and not 360. So people say, completely transformed 360 degrees. That just means you're back to the same spot, right?
Yeah.
But you want to obviously be transformed, and you wanna transform and change 180 degrees and leave your old past and look into the new. So that's really where it comes from. So we believe in metanoiing people. So we say, the staff that work at Metanoia, we call them metanoians. And when you come through, we want to metanoia you. So it's almost the little things that we have at the company.
Okay, that's fantastic. It seems like quite a culture that you've developed within your business. And for me, it's always interesting to know why people choose the names they choose for their enterprises, and more often than not, I'm sure in almost all cases, there's quite a deep meaning behind it. So thanks for sharing that with us and letting us know why and what Metanoia means to you.
Yeah.
So
No,
Sergey,
yes.
let's talk about this lovely thing called triple BEE. Now, I think that a lot of people in the business world, including myself from time to time, especially being a business owner, needs to comply with BEE, right? Our BEE requirements. Now, I'm not sure that everyone understands where this originated and what was the driving force behind Black economic empowerment. What was it designed to do? And why are organizations like yours in place to help other companies to become compliant? What was the original intention of BEE?
Wow. This, I mean, you could almost write a whole essay on this. What a question. Open-ended as well, I should really say. Every time I meet clients, every time I meet individuals and we're talking about it, everyone has something in them that they want to obviously develop, they obviously want to grow. Each individual aspires to growth and aspires to attaining some form of achievement in their lives. But when it comes to BEE, triple BEE transformation in general, especially in the context of South Africa, you would obviously remember and understand. I mean, yes, I was very young at the time, but history has taught us. 1994 elections, I remember it was hectic. People leading to the elections, many people didn't really know what would happen. But surprisingly, I remember it being very calm. I remember the stations. I remember people going to vote at the local schools where we stayed. It was just what an atmosphere, never witnessed before. So you now have a new government in place. We all know what had happened with South Africa, the legacy issues, which we're not really going to discuss on that, but we understand them. It's well documented. New government comes into place. They have this massive problem already awaiting them, which is we have a large part or population of the country that was excluded to participate in the economy meaningfully. And it's very important to understand that. So now the government has to pose itself a question: how do we get everyone to participate? Because there's a constitution, and the constitution says that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. Okay, that's one. So, but how do we get everybody to participate meaningfully in this transition, in this new growing economy, and especially in the new rainbow nation? Think about it this way. I always give this analogy. You have an athlete. Let's use an example of Usain Bolt. Okay. Usain Bolt is a great athlete. Everybody knows Usain Bolt. He runs, 5 seconds, 100-meter type of stuff, or 10 seconds, whatever it is. All right. But when Usain Bolt has to prepare himself and participate in a tournament, all right, he has to train well. He has to train his entire body. So imagine the case where Usain Bolt only trains his left leg. If he only trains his left leg, but doesn't train the right leg, so when he participates at the Olympics versus everyone else that have been training well, training the left legs as well as the right legs, chances are that Usain Bolt will not compete as well as he should be, and chances are he's probably going to come last. So let's bring this back home to our example. If you look at the Olympic Games is basically a global tournament, okay? The Olympic Games represent globalization, represent where we are competing and who we're competing with. The left leg that has been trained represents the previously advantaged, the white population, and then the right leg that was marginalized represents the black population. So the South African government, the economy itself, sits now with a problem that we only have the left leg that was trained, But for us to be able to compete at an international level, we need to get the right leg as well. So what do we then do? Do we stop training the left leg and focus on training only the right leg so that we can now get a balance, equilibrium, and then go and compete? The answer is probably no. We don't want to do that. We still need to train the left leg that was already trained. So that means we continue to develop the white population and continue to develop the white people in whatever it is that they were doing. But the previously disadvantaged black population, right leg, we need to put in place mechanisms that will fast track the development and the training. So we need to put a catalyst to fast track that so that they can get at the same level as the left leg so that we can be competitive at the global stage. So that's really the conundrum. So triple BEE for me, I always like to give that example, and I like to explain it in that way so that people can understand why it exists and why it had to come about. You cannot have a market that has close to 60 to, I don't know, 70, 80 million people, and 80% of that is completely neglected. That is a market that is massive and cannot be neglected. So we needed to do something. And government has done well to bring about this legislation to fast track, to develop, and put in place a catalyst that will get the black population right on top so that South Africa as a whole can compete at the global stage.
Okay, I mean, that's a very nice analogy. I think that also helps clarify, exactly why we have this thing called BEE. Let me ask you, in your opinion, I mean, the principles around why we have BEE and the upliftment and empowerment of the previously disadvantaged people is definitely something I think nobody can argue with it. I mean, as you say, the documented history speaks for itself. Do you believe that the way that the implementation of the BEE codes of practice, etc., have been done is aligned to that intent? If we look at from the year 1994 to the year 2022, do you believe that are we achieving the goals as a country?
Good question. Again, I think it depends on what it is that you're looking for. So if you look at overall, okay, the answer, some people might say is no. Others might say, yes, we are achieving, maybe not at the rate, okay, the speed at which we had anticipated we would get there. So where do I sit? My answer is probably in between, but I probably lean towards yes. I love the legislation, not just because I'm a practitioner. I love the legislation. I've seen it implemented properly, correctly, and the sort of change that this piece of legislation can actually bring about. It is absolutely amazing. So today we talk of triple BEE, but if you go back in the early days, we were really only talking about affirmative action. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
We used to talk a lot more about affirmative action, where again, there was a lot of misinterpretation around that, where people thought, no, affirmative action really means let's affirm where there was a white person, let's take them out and replace them with a black person automatically. It wasn't really that. Maybe it wasn't well understood and well put together, because if you understand, it was the first time around for many people, right? Then from affirmative action, we sort of moved into the employment equity mold, and then you had BEE, Black Economic Empowerment. And that largely only focused on ownership and management control. But remember, we're talking about a country that has experienced, the worst atrocities here. People denied opportunities to better themselves, to school themselves, to realize their potential. How are we going to get these people to be directors and to be shareholders if they've not been educated? So very quickly, government realized that Black economic empowerment was really just a narrow base. Yes, we had maybe a few people that got an opportunity to go and study, perhaps overseas in exile, and came back, and they were able to take on those roles and also be able to leverage off the opportunities in the early stages. But it was very important for government to realize this, and rightly so, to say, wait a minute, but we need to grow the base. All right. And how do we grow that base? It has to start right at the bottom. We need to train our people. We need to develop these people that were previously disadvantaged and marginalized, so that with time and education and experience and development, they will start occupying these positions in the junior, middle, senior, and eventually top management. So the implementation for anything is always good. The intentions are always good, as long as you keep it, I would say, flexible enough to be able to adjust as you go along. That is very important. And I think they've been able to do that to some extent. They've regulated the environment to bring companies like ourselves, that are there, SANES accredited companies, to actually go and conduct audits. All right. These companies have to be accredited. They go through a very stringent process. The SANES comes to audit them. SANES comes to check that they're able to do what they need to do and what they say they will do, so that when they actually verify and audit your company and say that you have achieved this type of BEE level or status, and anyone out there on the market will automatically have confidence and assurance in that. Then you have the other side of the transformation space, the consultants. We also play that role currently now, especially because we've just pulled out of the whole SANES, where we now want to purely just assist companies to understand the legislation better, prepare them also for the audits that will come. So where do I sit? Implement it properly, implement it correctly with the understanding of the legislation, the intended objectives. I tell you what, the results are amazing. There is a company that I'll never forget. I mean, I probably audited them for probably, I would say 6-7 years. And they had taken a lady, maintenance lady or cleaner, and trained this lady up to the point where this lady became a financial controller of the company. Now, wow. Can you imagine? This was a cleaner, all right, who was given an opportunity and became a financial controller of the company. Every time I went there, this lady will thank me and say, thank you so much for the opportunity that you gave me. I always say, it's not me, it's the legislation. And you are a prime example of what the legislation wants. It wants to give people opportunities. It wants people to be supported so that people can realize the potential that they have. And by doing so, only our economy will benefit and make us stronger to compete at a global scale.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that also one needs to look at implementation, not in a sort of a broad lens, but I think one needs to look at the lens organization by organization, because sometimes it does feel like for a lot of people, it does feel like it's a grudge that one is doing, because there's quite a lot of effort involved in ensuring, especially if you want to get to the higher levels in terms of a level 1 or a level 2 BEE. It's quite a intricate and it's quite an intense investment that an organization makes. But that investment needs to be, based on what you've said now, that investment needs to be looked at through another lens. It's actually an investment that we are making in diversifying and empowering the people within our country who are going to be our future leaders and our future business owners.
Exactly.
It's exactly not just a tick box exercise that one gets to get a certificate.
Exactly. And this is what we're telling corporates, and we're telling everybody, this is not a tick box exercise. You have to buy into the objectives. You have to buy into the intentions. You have to buy into transformation as a whole. Maybe not BE directly, but let's start with transformation as a whole. I mean, today we sit here almost in a post-COVID recovery mode, if you could say, for lack of a better word, but that has led to transformation. I mean, today we're having our meetings through Teams and Zoom, etc. But before that, Many people preferred, an in-person meetings, but we see the value. We see the value, and COVID has taught us that. So we've needed to move, we've needed to be transformed, we've needed to transform ourselves. Once you understand that transformation is key and change is key, it's now about managing the change. And B-BBEE is in the same way. It forms part of change management, forms part of transformation. And now let's accept it, let's deal with it, and let's manage it, and let's evolve with it. And let's not see it as a grudge purchase. And I think a lot of the time people see it as a grudge purchase because, it's legislated. Government says you must do this, and it says you must do this. No, buy into the process, buy into the intentions, and you're going to love it. And you'll implement it properly, correctly, with the right heart. I think that is very important.
Sometimes the grudge mentality and the grudge feeling is related to the cost, especially again when I talk about the larger organizations. Because let's be honest, when you're running a business, all roads lead back to the customer, right? And what I mean by that is somewhere inside your costing model needs to be a provision for BEE costs. So by definition, that means that your customer, the cost to the customer goes up because of the amount of investment you need to make in BEE. It has to, because that's either the cost of your service or the cost of your product goes up. And what's your view on that? Is that the wrong way to look at it, or is that just the nature of the beast?
I think, yes, nature of the beast, perhaps a combination, nature of the beast. But if you look at it, yes, others want to see it as a tax, but it's a tax that government has probably said, okay, you guys have accused us of corruption. We're not able to maybe manage things better, or we're not able to manage already what we have. Are you with me? At stake right now. But let us turn it slightly around and say this tax that we could have probably increased through corporate tax, raise the money, and then go and implement all of this. How about you then start actually undergoing and undertaking all of these initiatives? So you can look at it that way. But the other reason why I'm saying you've got to embrace it and understand it is, yes, it may start as a cost, and it's not something that I've costed for or budgeted for, or now I've got to start incurring this cost and budgeting going forward. But if you look and understand that the underlying legislations and how government wants to incentivize companies to actually be compliant to transformation and play a key role, you would see this as not just as an investment, but you could actually use BEE and transformation to grow your business strategically and really well.
Okay. Can you give us an example of clients that you've experienced that have done that by growing their businesses through using the legislation for what it was intended?
Yeah, I mean, very easy and very simple. So we talk of B-BBEE levels, right? So level 1 being obviously the best level. Level 8 is obviously right now the worst, but the worst is just being non-compliant. Some people psychologically call it level 9. So I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but if you do hear of somebody saying, oh, I'm a level 9, it's just trying to play on you, but they're really just non-compliant. So the higher you obviously are ranked, you call it level 1, level 2, level 3, it becomes very important because all your customers want to obviously do business with you. So now you become very attractive to any potential customer saying, I want to do business with anyone that is transforming this economy, anyone that believes in the economy and believes in giving other people an opportunity. Mm. Can you see how you start to grow your business already? And then what you also have is tenders, for example. You have tenders out there that government would put out and say, anyone bidding for this tender must be a level 2 and maybe 51% black owned, or at least 20% black owned, for example. So it means you have to strive to get to a level 2 and have whatever prerequisites they request from an empowerment scorecard, never mind everything else, price, service, and quality, etc. All things being equal, then your obviously transformation score will trump, right? Will go above. So you could look at growing your business in that way as well. So now, if you had 100 people willing to bid for that tender, But now if they're all not level 2, you're cutting out all the excess companies. You could potentially only have 20 people that you're now competing against. Can you see how you can do that? So that becomes very important. So you've got to look at it that way. And also for your very same customers, you also now have individuals that have bought into the whole concept of transformation and say, we will support companies that are supporting transformation. And therefore buy your product. And don't forget, further on, for any business person who then wants to sell the company and make money, you have to factor B and transformation in, because at the end of the day, if I'm buying a company and their BEE status level is not as good, the valuation of the company should go down. That also has to factor in the valuation of the company, because it means later down the line, people or customers will no longer utilize my services or buy my product, and I will be then affected. So you have to cost all of that in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Further than that, I can go as far as even talking about some of the legislation or incentives that government has put in. If you look at maybe under skills development, for example, training of previously disadvantaged Black people, putting them on learnerships, growing and developing them. Government has put in tax rebates in the form of ETI, employee tax incentives. If you are employing anyone between the ages of 18 and 29, you can tap into that, and that's 1,500 Rand that you can claim back from government on a month-to-month on the stipend or salary that you're giving that youngster. That is there to help you. You can utilize that very well. If you look at the tax rebate in training the people, 80,000 Rand for anyone that you've trained, 120,000 Rand for any disabled person that you train. You can use that strategically to actually reduce your income tax.
Yes. And I think you lead us on to a very important point, which is there might be quite a few folks out there who think that BEE scores are determined by ownership and ownership alone. So you have to have a Black owner to be BEE compliant, if I put it that way. But there's a number of other elements. There's management control, there's skills, there's supply and enterprise development, social economic. There's many other factors that lead and build this offering of transformation. It is not just ownership.
Absolutely correct. So remember, I spoke of the narrow base scorecard, which was initially, when we started out, BEE only focused on ownership and management control. And that management control largely spoke only about boards of directors. And what we saw, a lot of Black people were only being nominated or appointed as non-executive directors in any case. They were not really appointed as executive directors. And the people that were doing the deals were only a select few that had government connections. I don't want to mention any names, but you would hear them in the news every time. They've struck a deal with so-and-so, they've did a deal with so-and-so. Eventually, we had to broaden this. And government, we have to applaud government in some cases. Obviously, I'm one of the guys that will say, no, they've not done well. But when they've done something well, we also have to appreciate and, applaud them. And they realize this. And this is why we now have what we call triple BEE. Broad-based Black economic empowerment. We needed to broaden that from only ownership and management control based. That went to now include employment equity to say, wait a minute, but we want to see Black people previously disadvantaged, and by definition, Black here for BEE purposes includes everyone that was marginalized by the previous regime. So it would be Africans, colored, Indians. Yes, there was a court order. Chinese, the Chinese people that were also in South Africa at the time were treated as second-class citizens, and they were actually able to demonstrate that, and they won that, and therefore they are also classed as part of the previously disadvantaged. But you have to prove that you were in the country during that time, or you were a descendant of a family that was in the country during that time. So employment equity then looks at how do we bring Black people into junior, middle, senior management. And let's not forget, we also have the disabilities. We have disabled people that are already marginalized by society by virtue of their disability. We need them to also participate meaningfully in the economy. So that looks at it. which is great. You now have another element or pillar that is skills development, which I'm very passionate about. For you to get into junior, middle, and senior management, you need to be well skilled. You need to be well developed. You need to be well learned and trained and have the experience. So skills development, you can see it's very important by the number of points it carries on the matrix. So this talks largely to how and what are we doing to train our employees. And now it's gone beyond just training of our employees, training of Black people in South Africa. So if you look at this piece of legislation, for me, you should not find any South African out on the street begging, because the legislation says, go and find Black South African, train them, develop them, get them to participate in the economy, not necessarily as employees. We can train and develop people to also become entrepreneurs and start something of their own. And then you further have another element, preferential procurement. This is critical because this will allow you to grow your business as any entrepreneur. I mentioned to it earlier. We're looking at who are you procuring your businesses from, who are you procuring your services, who are you procuring your goods from, and is that particular company, BEE compliant or not? And if they are BEE compliant, you want to do business with them. If they're not BEE compliant, you want to at least give them a chance to say, hey, buddy, we see that you're not compliant. We want you to be compliant. We want to do business with you. Can you work on this? And if they persist and continue to say no, then for me, I tell companies, you've got to cut them off and replace them with somebody else that has embraced transformation and BBBEE. Then you've got enterprise and supplier development. What those elements really talk about is to say, how can we support companies that are already in our existing supply chain, develop them, grow them, so that they're even able to provide their services to us, not just at a better rate, but in a more efficient, effective manner to help them grow, so that we're not the only customers, but they can go and find other customers as well. Enterprise development, any company that is not in our supply chain that we can bring in, so essentially customers or non-customers that we can help, we can support, we can develop, we can grow in various ways. And then you have the other element, socioeconomic development, that deals really with social issues. A lot of people refer to it as CSI and CSR. Yes, they somewhat are aligned, but for BEE purposes, socioeconomic development has to do with previously disadvantaged individuals, previously disadvantaged communities. How do we help them access the main economy? Whatever we're doing, are you with me? How do we help them not just access the main economy, but also become sustainable participants in the main economy?
Coming back to the earlier point we were talking about, where I mentioned that all roads lead back to the customer, the reality of being a business owner is that one needs to constantly be probing the market and offering your service, your solution, or your product into the market, and generating a revenue and making profit. I mean, that's the definition of what businesses do. Sometimes I've seen that in order to gain access through or BEE attraction through becoming a better level, i.e., improving to a level 1 or level 2, level 3, certain organizations try to accelerate the point system. And what I mean by that is, if you look at management control or if you look at ownership, organizations try to appoint people rapidly to get those points, which gives them the competitive advantage in the market, which is sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes is a negative, because the rapid appointment of people without the development of them leads to certain operational issues that the business might face. Have you experienced that in your examples?
Yeah, absolutely correct. And for me, we don't like to advise that to any companies. What we say is focus on all your sort of indirect empowerment elements. And by those, I mean the socioeconomic development, enterprise development, supply development, preferential procurement. If you focus on those elements, one, you will see meaningful change and meaningful transformation, and the impact is far greater. But when you're too fixated now on the HR element, which is management control, employment equity, and skills development, don't get me wrong, it's a great thing, especially the skills development. But if an entity was to do what you've just described now, just to move people around and rapidly, as you say, and promote them, it's a great thing. You know, when somebody is promoted, don't get me wrong, it's a great thing. We want to obviously applaud them. But the question is, are they ready for that new role? Are they ready for the promotion? And if they are, great. If they are not, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot, because, and you're setting this individual for failure. You're putting them somewhere you know already they're not going to do well, they're going to fail, but you're doing this so that you can get more BE points. But at the end of the day, you're now messing up with the company's operations. You know, a business still needs to survive. The business imperatives still must take precedence, I always tell when we consult with companies. So don't focus too much on the management control and the rapid promotion of individuals. Provide them with the necessary training, the necessary support, and when they are ready to take on more, by all means, promote them.
It's a difficult one because let me give you a practical example, right? A few years ago, we did a project with a mining organization, and the specific constraint that they were looking at us to help solve for them was the way they manage and schedule their trains.
Yeah.
So every third day, a train with 108 wagons, a locomotive with 108 wagons would arrive at a silo, and the silo would then drop the product into 108 wagons, right? But the team on the ground was so dependent on those locomotives being in a good condition, because if they weren't, it caused the entire 108 stockpile to obviously be delayed.
Yeah.
Now the people that they have on that mine that manage the locomotives, and I think this is also applicable to some of the guys that have been working in the Transnet environment, those guys are fourth and fifth generation in some cases locomotive engineers. Their father's father were locomotive engineers. Their ears are genetically tuned to look and find certain failures of certain axles on a 108 wagon locomotive. They can tell you which axle is seized and which wheel is seized and how you need to. So over time, and it's not a short period of time, I'm talking about generations, these people have built up the skill set. Now, the mine is under pressure because they need to improve their BEE standing so that they can get larger work. That means that the management control and things like that needs to be adjusted. So how for them it becomes a very difficult situation around not rapidly replacing these people with engineers that have newly qualified, that have come out the tertiary system, that are black and previously disadvantaged. So they hire these people, they put them in these positions, and the people are now, the BEE points look better, but the operational excellence of the operation is at a low. Yeah. So, I mean, in a situation like that, and the point I'm getting to here is, an example, and the point I'm getting to using that example is that the B-BBEE legislation and the way it's implemented needs to be done in a balanced way.
Absolutely, and I couldn't have agreed with you any more and better. I think, in a case like that, it's very difficult because the company probably is under pressure to achieve a particular level on the market so that, they remain and they keep their operations. But by doing so, you're now putting people, I wouldn't necessarily say that are not qualified, but let's maybe use a word to say people that are not ready to take on those new roles. So every company and every manager will have to look at that. And I'm absolutely for promotion and giving people opportunities. But when you do put them there, let's support them and let's ensure that they're able to do that in a better and an effective way, and so that they too can grow and learn. So the counter argument is always, well, if you don't give these people an opportunity and don't put them there, how will they learn? How will they get there, right? We're saying, no. You can still learn. You can be an understudy. When the time is right for you to then take over, you can take over, but it doesn't mean now the individual that was there before must completely leave. You can you can still keep that individual to see to it that the new person, the newly appointed individual, is able to cope and gets the support and then is pushed to greater heights.
Yeah,
You're absolutely right. There has to be a balanced approach on it.
yeah, and I mean the final point I want to make on this is that when entrepreneurs that are listening to this podcast, when your business grows and you eventually get to a point where you need to become really cognizant of how you are managing your BEE, Sergey, would it be fair to say from QSC level up, or would it be just from generic level up?
I think from QSC up, obviously, the legislation has brought in some enhancements. So if you are 51% black owned, you automatically qualify for level 2. All you need is an affidavit. You complete that and you're able to compete on the market. And reason being is that, the cost, the legislation, the implementation of all of this became too expensive for smaller black owned companies. They just couldn't keep up. Hence, government introduced this enhancement. And if you are 100% black owned, you would obviously then be a level 1. So it is fair to say from QSC, but generally it is QSCs that have less than 51% black ownership that have to obviously comply with the legislation. Look, our companies here, we're there to assist, to support them. So if they want to, give us a shout and give us a call, by all means, we can always schedule a meeting. But it is something that they need to start thinking about. And when we talk of QSCs, qualifying small enterprise with a turnover of 10 million and more. So once you know you've hit that, I always say don't wait to hit that and then you start putting a plan. If you know you're already almost near that mark and you know with the next couple of orders or couple of business transactions you're going to do, as any good entrepreneur, you need to forecast, you need to look at where your business is going, and you know you're going to hit that in the next couple of years, then start planning around that and start building some of these initiatives already. And I always encourage anyone, even though the legislation says you're exempt from complying with all of this, but it doesn't stop you from doing good. It doesn't stop you from participating and doing socioeconomic activities, supporting other black-owned businesses, enterprise and supplier development. You can still do it, perhaps at a smaller level or smaller scale. And when you then reach QSC scorecard, 10 million and more and 50 million, now you are obligated to do it. And therefore, you have no choice but to do it and comply.
Yeah, and I mean, it is definitely a strategic and on some level tactical conversation that you need a good partner to work with. Somebody that understands the value chain of your business, because as Sergey has taken us through the elements, this is not just about ownership. We're talking about CSR, we're talking about the suppliers that one uses, the enterprises that one sees development in, the internal people skills, bringing on learners, even the control of management, and then ownership as well. So the scorecard is quite varied and quite broad, as you've said, Sergey, to use the correct terminology there. So, guys, if you are an aspiring entrepreneur, your business is growing, you want to start doing business on a larger scale, which means that your BEE situation needs to improve. It's not a tick box exercise. You can get away with the affidavit and the downloading of BEE certificates for only so long. But as Sergey said, a good entrepreneur is someone who can see into the future and get the right partners on board that can help you through structuring your business to become more compliant and to help transform this country and help, as Sergey said to us earlier, help grow the left leg, or was it the right leg?
The right leg it was, yeah.
Help grow the right leg, yeah. So, Sergey, we've flown through this podcast. It's been extremely informative for me. So thank you very much for your insights, and thank you for the way that you've conveyed it and simplified it for everyone to understand. The last question that I have for you now is not so much around BE, but it's around aspiring entrepreneurs and people that have a vision to become a business owner like yourself. If you could give them one tip in terms of one piece of advice that any aspiring entrepreneur could take, that would be something to remember to make their businesses a success, what would that be?
Oh, that's
And I know I'm putting you on the spot, eh? I didn't even prepare you.
Yeah, definitely. So, but as an entrepreneur, you always got to be prepared, right? And as an
Right.
individual, you've always got to be prepared. And one thing I've always said, I say it, and I will always continue to say is prepare yourself for the opportunity. And by that, I mean, when you are prepared, you're able to see the opportunities. All right.
Yeah.
When you're prepared, you're able to take advantage of the opportunities. Some people I know, a person in my own life, have become entrepreneurs purely, I don't want to say by luck, but they happen to be at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
But that doesn't just fall to anyone. It means you were well prepared.
Exactly.
You get what I'm saying? So my saying is always, guys, prepare yourself. If you are aspiring to be an entrepreneur, prepare yourself. See yourself as an entrepreneur. You cannot be an employee, all right, and not wanting to do what is expected of you as an employee, but yet you want to go and be an entrepreneur. Because you're going to have the same problem with those employees. How are you going to treat those employees? How do you want those employees to work for you? So respect that. See that as an opportunity, training you to, your destination, if I can put it. And one other piece of advice I would like to give them is, no matter what it may be, no matter the worst circumstances, atrocities, opportunity always lies in there. So I want to leave to say, guys, the word opportunity exists everywhere. You go to DRC, you go to war-torn areas, people are being entrepreneurial and still making money. So in areas that I probably wouldn't want to go, but somebody's going there and is taking the leap of faith, the boldness and courage to go there and make it happen. But the key underlying word there is opportunity.
Sergey, Bashala, thank you for that lovely conclusion, guys. I'm going to leave it there because I don't think I can say it any better than Mr. Bashala has just said it. Sergey, once again, thank you for introducing your business Metanoia Ratings to us, guys. I'll give you guys a link to check out Sergey's website should you have any requirements. Sergey, I wish you, your wife, your family, and your team all the very best, and may all your dreams and wishes come true.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Wish you the very best too.
Thank you, Sergey. Guys, as we approach the weekend and as we approach the end of October, to remember one thing. If you do one thing only, and that's stay inspired. Cheers.